the steam with a chance to win it in his return. Here goes Morant. He spins. Morant scores! And the timer expires. Count the basket. And Ja Morant. The Spurs to one field goal attempt. Ja again. Sent it in.
I've been putting work in, man. I ain't played a game in 8 months. Had a lot of time, learn myself. A lot of hard days, where I went through it. But, basketball is, my life, what I love, therapeutic for me. And I'm just, excited to be back.
All right, walk us through that last play.
So Ja Morant out again, unfortunately. Season-ending injury right after he came back from suspension. Only going to tally 9 games for the 2024 season. Really unfortunate for him and Memphis as well as the league overall. Welcome back to the show. It's Caleb. Got my man Noel with me right here. And we're going to be breaking this down. Some really shocking breaking news from Shams. Where were you when you got the notification, Noel, and what's your initial reaction to it?
Caleb, I was brushing my teeth when I got the notification, and it hit me really hard. Hit me really, really hard because no matter what people have to say about Ja Morant, the off-court stuff, everything that goes on off the court is kind of we're in the social media era. Everybody has something to say, and, rightfully so. This is why news gets put out like this. These players, they sign contracts. They're on national television. So, therefore, when they breach certain things, it is going to be, let out to the public. But with that being said, Ja Morant is one of the most exciting players that I've ever had the pleasure to watch ever since he was coming out of Murray State. I love the story when he was in high school, not being recruited at all. And literally, it was because of a bag of chips. My mom tells me the story all the time. She finds it very inspirational as well. A bag of chips is why he was recruited to Murray State and why he eventually became the number 2 pick just behind Zion Williamson. So to think that he was just 9 games into his return this season, where the Grizzlies went from being 7-20 on the year to 6-3, it just hurts to see that he's going to be out the rest of the season. I mean, Caleb, where were you when you saw this, and how did you feel about it?
Yeah, I was with a friend, just hanging out, grabbing some dinner, and I believe you texted me the news. That's where I first found it out, actually. Yeah, just a bit of a shock considering he came back so strong against New Orleans, against Zion, and his team hit a game winner, had, I think, 34 that night. Really impressive return, and honestly, kind of like a storybook ending. It wasn't like he was going to be up for consideration for any All-NBA or even All-Star nods, just due to the time that he missed due to that suspension. But, I was really excited to see what the Grizzlies could do with the full roster, especially because of just the really bad injury luck that they've had. I mean, you look at Steven Adams, out before the season, he got declared, and really unfortunate for their big man rotation, as well as Brandon Clark, still recovering from that torn Achilles, and just a bunch of little things. And obviously, the head of the snake, Ja Morant, now being out, really unfortunate for their future.
Super unfortunate is definitely the way to put it. You look at all these other young teams that are developing, getting these lottery picks in, getting chemistry. And my thing is that when Ja Morant has been on the court, he's been electric. He's made all of his teammates better. There was this narrative going around the past few years that when he didn't play, the rest of the team played better. And their record was really good, but it goes to show the talent that they were able to put together. Even someone like Dylan Brooks, who was heavily criticized by the media, he played that role of being a pest. He hit threes in the regular season. When it came to playing against the Lakers in the playoffs, obviously that didn't show up too well. But now he has his bag over in Houston, and he's showing that he can still perform at a high NBA level. You have Jaren Jackson Jr., who is the reigning defensive player of the year. Desmond Bane, who's somehow, some way, even with this stocky football player build, he still is able to move super smoothly. Like I was telling you the other day, whenever Ja's on the court, it feels like Desmond Bane plays at an all-star level. His confidence just goes up. And, I mean, Ja, he's the leader of that team. He's the energy guy. He is the guy that they can give the ball to in clutch moments. And in that first game back from suspension, 34 points, hits the game winner. Looks like he was not rusty at all, and it was just insane to see. Caleb, my first big question following this unfortunate breaking Ja Morant news is how will him missing the first season of his 5-year, $197 million contract extension with the Grizzlies impact his place among the NBA food chain? Do you have any reactions or answers to that?
I mean, I think the optics on him from last season were already pretty dire. I think with the initial suspension for being in a club and flashing that gun, coming back in the playoffs hurts his hand, not really as effective. And then the main storyline of Dylan Brooks kind of taking on LeBron didn't really end so well for him. Doesn't get brought back under any circumstances, and the team kind of changes around him. Like, you had Tyus Jones as that backup point guard, and you mentioned that a lot of people thought that Ja Morant away from the team actually helped the Grizzlies. What people forget is Tyus Jones being that backup point guard who could step into a starting role. Now, obviously, he went to Washington in a trade this offseason. They really don't have that sort of continuity, and that kind of shows itself in the record that they had before he left. In terms of where he places among the NBA's elite, you got guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Luka Doncic, and Anthony Edwards out west. They're really showing their stuff this season. And when you think about their place in the standings and how well they're doing statistically, Ja being absent from that, I feel like he's getting lost in these conversations. I feel like we all forgot just how good this guy is, because you think about him taking on Steph Curry in the play-in game. That's kind of where we first saw him in that big stage. Takes over the A seed from the scoring champion who went nuclear that season. Steph Curry was unreal in 2021. But he loses that first-round matchup to the Jazz. And, of course, that's a young team. You're going to have some growing pains there. Past 2 seasons where there's been expectations, you bow out to the Warriors, unfortunately. They end up winning the championship. And obviously last year, first round out as a 2 seed to the Lakers. Really unfortunate for them. So I feel like Memphis, they've kind of just been forgotten, I think, in national discourse. And obviously Ja being out doesn't necessarily help their case with a bunch of young all-stars as well.
Yeah, definitely. And when I look at Ja Morant, when he truly became that star that everybody loved and everybody started putting up there in the best point guard conversations and MVP race, was from 2021 to 2022. When he upped his points per game by 8, the Grizzlies went from 38 wins to 56. And then he won the most improved player of the year. And even though he wanted to give it to Desmond Bane, it was clear as day that he deserved it. He had taken that jump from just a young star to truly a superstar in this league. And I mean, being a little guy, having handles, being able to get to the rim and finish above anyone else, I always looked at him like Allen Iverson. He had that swag coming onto the court. He had that energy that you just looked at like, damn, this dude, he's a rock star. He's going to come in here and he's going to be on House of Highlights every single day. And he's going to get wins while he does it. And he always played with his heart on his sleeve, bring up the rest of his teammates with him. And me and you talk about all the time, like the Grizzlies, for the past 2 years, they've been that team where it was like us against the world, but they were tight knit. If one guy went down, the rest of the team was getting off the bench, squaring up, making sure that their guy was good. And, that energy I think is very much needed in basketball, especially when there's talks that the league has gone a little softer, a little like refs have a lot of power. I think the Grizzlies were kind of a breath of fresh air in the sense that they brought so much energy. But I mean, like you said, looking at Ja, he is kind of getting left behind in a way. I think talent-wise, still amazing. I think if he had been healthy, it would have been incredible to see how he kind of got his name back out there again. But you bring up SGA, first season with his real squad of young contributors on OKC like Chet Holmgren and J-Dub taking a big leap. And the result right now, they're the 2nd seed in the West, and he's a top 3 to 5 MVP candidate. Anthony Edwards, only 22 years old. Can you believe that, Caleb? That's crazy to me.
I can't.
First season with legit chemistry and good pieces around him, and the result is the number 1 seed in the West. You also have Jason Tatum, 25 years old, not 19 years old. Best record in the NBA, arguably the best team around him this year, and they're looking like the title favorites right now. Now, Caleb, what do you think that the Grizzlies are going to do this season? Are they just going to tank for their draft pick, which they thankfully still have, 2024? Or do you think they're going to make some moves, maybe still try to make the most out of Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., Marcus Smart, and maybe still push for a playing game?
I thought that with Ja's return, hoping that he would come back healthy, obviously that's not the case anymore, unfortunately. I thought that Memphis would really try to contend for a play-in spot because you had a lot of draft capital still. You had the core pieces of Bane, who's putting up some pretty good numbers this season, 25, 5, and 5, 48, 39, 86 splits. But that 39% from 3, he's doing it on 9 threes a game. So it's not just, he's taking 2 or, 5 a game and he's hitting 2. He's hitting like over 3 on 9 attempts. So it's high volume shooting and very effective. And Jaren Jackson Jr., he's obviously averaging a career high in points this season with more on-ball responsibility, with Ja being out for those first 25 games. Defense is kind of taking a dip. He's still fouling at not a great rate for what you want out of a great defender, but former defensive player of the year, still putting up 2 blocks a game. So those 2 core pieces are there, and you extended both. So those 3 pieces of Ja, Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., going to be exciting for next season, but I think for this year, the mentality has to be just reset it, try and get a high draft pick, and maybe trade off some of the vets that you have on the roster that might not fit the timeline anymore. Marcus Smart, you brought him in through an offseason trade. Tyus Jones was involved with that through the Kristaps Porzingis deal to Boston. It was a 3-teamer. He's still a great defender, maybe not deserving of that 2022 or 2022 Defensive Player of the Year, because Jaren Jackson won it in 23. Some people still dispute that. Some people might have said his former teammate Robert Williams should have won that. Regardless, his reputation still, I think, one of the scrappiest guards in the league. 2 steals a game. He's hitting threes at a pretty good clip. He had a career high 8 against your Lakers, unfortunately. That loss.
Don't bring that up, man. Come on, I'm still hurting over that. Hopefully we win against Toronto. We're playing right now. Let me check that score real quick while you finish up.
But on the topic of 3-pointers, he hit 50% in this game against the Mavericks as well. Unfortunately, just bad injury luck for Memphis as well, because he apparently dislocated his finger while draining a 3 in the game. So hopefully
I did see that. That was crazy. Yeah, that was crazy. I saw he hit the 3.
Crazy.
Respect to him. That's
and Jaren Jackson Jr. as well.
Nothing but heart.
He's still hurt. He missed this game. So it's going to be really interesting to see what they do with Smart. And another name to look out for, I think, should be Luke Kennard, formerly of the Clippers, Pistons, a bunch of other teams. I think that his 3-point shooting ability could be really helpful to a contender. 39% this season, limited minutes due to lack of defense. But if you need a shooter, might want to call up Memphis, because they got a couple pieces that I think some teams could go after.
No, definitely. I think, like you said, if they are going to try to go, obviously they have guys like Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson, who they're great players, still, I think, cornerstones of that franchise, along with Ja Morant when he's back healthy. But definitely Memphis should be looking to sell. Maybe get a couple more draft picks, get some young guys that they could fit better in their timeline. Luke Kennard, other than I think last season when he kind of just fell off and he was shooting like 13% from 3 for a while. Other than that, years before with the Clippers, always a very, very sharp shooter. I think that he definitely could contribute on a contender, and his place on Memphis probably won't be much if they're not contending for that play-in game by the time the trade deadline rolls around. So it'll be super interesting. But in terms of the other young guys on the Grizzlies right now, like you said, you had Tyus Jones, who got traded away, and you also lost some of your depth over the past couple of years. Do you think there's any other young guys on Memphis who could take a bigger step now that Ja's going to be out? That's 27 points off the board right there, along with like 8 assists now that Ja's not going to be playing. I know they have Zaire Williams, who was the number 10 pick in the 2021 draft. They also have PG Jackson, who was a second-round draft pick, I think around the 59th. He barely got selected by the Grizzlies in the 2023 NBA draft. Do you think either of those guys could be something for them this year, Caleb?
I'd say that Zaire, for sure. I think he's been on those playoff rosters, and he's kind of been caught at the end of the bench, and people talk about his potential. 10th overall pick in 21. A couple guys in this draft class have sort of passed him, but now that he has more on-ball responsibilities, there's more of a role for him. Only in 18 minutes per game to start this month. He's averaging 11 points, and he's been pretty good on the ball with athleticism. I've seen him catch a couple lobs, and he's been making his threes. So hopefully that momentum continues. And then you got a guy like Vince Williams. In the Phoenix game where Ja missed it with shoulder soreness, and that ended up being the reason why he's out for the season now, he put up 19-9 with 2 blocks against the Suns. And that's a tough team with their big 3. Obviously, they got their issues with chemistry and constantly being injured, but 3 top-level talents in Beal, Booker, and Durant, it's still hard to go up against them, especially with the context of them missing Ja. 19-9 with 2 blocks and hit a couple threes as a lefty, showed a little bit of defensive ability. And I think with the amount of injuries that the Grizzlies have, just play the young guys and see what you got. Because, I mean, both Williams, I think Zaire and Vince, they both got roles now that Ja is unfortunately out for the season.
Yeah, it definitely hurts. Definitely going to have to rely on those draft picks, those young guys getting more reps, and hopefully just being ready once he returns next season. The Grizzlies have reported that they expect them to make a full recovery for next year. It's going to be a tough road. Labrum injuries are never easy, especially seeing that I believe it is on his right arm, right? That where the injury was, or was
I can't remember, but I mean it's a tough injury regardless.
We'll do a quick check. Yeah, either way, look, thankfully, it's not a lower body injury. We know how electric he is playing off the ground, and I would not want to see any knee, ankle, calf, anything that is going to affect the athleticism, because that's still the most exciting part of his game. But also sucks because the shooting was starting to come around too. He was starting to get more comfortable taking pull-up threes, playing off the ball, letting Desmond Bane do his thing and kick it out to him. And I think that was going to be the part that maybe took him from a 26, 27 point per game score to maybe a 32, 34. And that's really where you get into MVP talks, when you're able to create like he is, getting the lane and kick out, but also be a threat from deep. So I'm really curious to see not only how he recovers, but also how he develops the rest of his game while he's rehabbing. So I wish him nothing but the best on that end. My final question for you, Caleb, would have to be, do you think there's any trade pieces that the Memphis Grizzlies could try to deal off?
Like I said, Marcus Smart and Kennard, they're the ones that come to mind for me, especially because your current draft pick is at 6th overall.
Yep.
So, I mean, you're looking at not getting OG Anunoby obviously hurt them, and I think it kind of resets your mentality on how you want to construct this roster from now on. I think in the draft, there's 2 guys that on the wing that I think could help them. Matas Buzelis and Ron Holland, both in the G League right now. Heard a lot of good things about them, some good potential. And if you're thinking about maybe replacing Steven Adams, Kyle Filipowski from Duke, I know he was supposed to come out last year, decided to come back. He might be another name, but the 2 names that I'm looking at in terms of veterans for championship contenders, I'd say Smart and Kennard for sure.
Do you think there's a world where that draft pick could be traded, put in a package?
At this point, I'm not too sure, just because I think it's better to replace the talent that you lost, I think, in the offseason and sort of try to develop as you go, because keep in mind, they hit on all of their draft picks pretty much to build this core. You think about Jaren Jackson Jr., 4th overall in 2018, hit Defensive Player of the Year. Ja Morant, 2-time All-NBA, hit. Desmond Bane, nobody really wanted him. I believe the Boston Celtics traded him from the 30th overall pick. People may make fun of his wingspan, but he is knocking down threes at an elite rate. So you lock down all 3 of those guys to long-term extensions. That's your core of the future, and I think you should just continue to build cheaply through the draft, and I think try and get another young prospect in there for what appears to be a lost season for them in 24. So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Especially looking at a team like Memphis, not a big market. Don't get a lot of marquee free agents. You definitely have to build through the draft. I mean, just one last taking a look at Ja Morant. This dude, he came in as a rookie, and just the second season, he took that team to the postseason. He was taking the reins from Mike Conley. There was a lot of smoke about whether or not Conley should have been moved in the first place. People kind of saw it as like moving away from a guy that had stayed so loyal for so long. But Ja, he completely put the speed on that rebuild that the Grizzlies were doing, and it wasn't even a rebuild at that point. It was an instant, hey, we're right back in the mix. We're still grit and grind. We're still out here going up against some of the best teams in the league, taking out Steph, meeting Steph again in the semifinals over in 2022. So definitely excited to see how this core continues to build. I hope those 3 stay together. Ja, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr. Caleb, any final thoughts on the Ja Morant breaking news in the future of the Grizzlies?
Yeah, just really tough to see their season so far. Losing all those pieces. You got Dylan Brooks getting the last laugh on you in Houston when you said you wouldn't sign him under any circumstances, and then he hits a dagger in your face. At home, no less. Yeah, because I believe Houston was a road team in that game.
Yep.
Kind of just a perfect encapsulation of how it's all kind of gone wrong, how fans aren't really going to show up for a team without Ja, and when the slightest bit of hope is there, when your main moneymaker and attraction like comes back from a lengthy suspension, showing the world what he can do. Just really unfortunate to see a season-ending injury that, honestly, I don't think even Ja Morant expected, because I believe he posted on social media he's tired of posting, "I'll be back soon." So
yeah.
Wish him well, and hopefully he heals up healthy for the 2025 season for sure.
Definitely, man. And, the only silver lining of this is that he's already locked in with the team. Luckily, this was the first year of his extension. He's still having for 4 more years, and he's still going to be the cornerstone of your franchise. I believe the Grizzlies are still going to be fully invested in him as the face of their franchise. Hopefully, he can get back to the status where he's among potentially the faces of the NBA when he's back, especially those young stars. And, best of recovery to him, and hopefully the Memphis Grizzlies can keep their vision afloat and we see them back in postseason contention as soon as possible. But Caleb, my man, thank you for joining me. I know this wasn't the episode we expected to make, but in the NBA, this new topics, new news every day. So thank you, my guy, for joining me.
Thanks for having me, dude.
Yes, sir. Make sure you guys stay tuned in, hit that subscribe button, smash that like button, notification bell, all the above. Really helps us all around. Follow me at Noel on Instagram and TikTok. Follow my guy Caleb at the Win Column on Instagram. Gonna get real active on there. You guys have a good rest of your day.